Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here. I wanted to make this video to respond to this minor controversy out there about Pierre Poilievre and his media strategy for the Conservative Party. There was this American podcaster, Patrick Bet-Davis, who did a big call-up video, which I will be playing some clips from later, saying that because Pierre Poilievre didn't want to come onto his show, that he is blowing it in Canada and he's going to let Justin Trudeau win again. I know I just said Justin Trudeau win again, and it's because Patrick Bet-Davis doesn't know anything about Canadian politics and legitimately thinks that Trudeau is still running. And he, oddly enough, seems to think that Pierre Poilievre failed to beat Trudeau in 2021. That's not what happened. But again, when you're talking to people who don't know anything about Canadian politics, everything gets a little bit confusing. Now, my take on this, and I might actually want to read some of everyone else's takes. People are saying that the Conservative Party and Pierre Poilievre just don't do enough podcasts. They don't go on enough, independent media shows. They need to be out there speaking to people more often because it worked for Trump, it worked for Javier Milei, and I will actually say I kind of agree. Pierre Poilievre probably should be doing more media, going on every independent media show he can find that is, respectable. Don't go on one where it's maybe clickbait or people just covering sensationalism or whatnot. Go on people's shows like Juno News. He did a interview with Candace Malcolm over there. That was a good move. He should do sit down interviews with Rebel News, with the Western Standard, do all of it. Because even if it's not the biggest show, Stephen Harper proved even 10 years after being prime minister, him going on a YouTuber show with only 300 subscribers, if you saw this, he actually generated like tens of thousands of views just going on any show. But the thing is that then people are saying that Poilievre should be doing American shows like Patrick Bet-Davis and Joe Rogan and, Lex Friedman. No, he shouldn't. He shouldn't be doing that. Do you think at a time with trade tensions with the US, it would be smart for him to fly down to Austin, Texas to do podcasts with very Trumpy American commentators? I have no problem with Trump, other than the fact that I don't like tariffs on Canada and it's a silly policy and whatnot. But still, what? Look, no, you cannot go on an American show right now. You will be looked at as some sort of like traitor to Canada. And by the way, it goes both ways. Mark Carney already looks like a clown for launching his liberal leadership campaign on The Daily Show. That was a bad move. He moved his company to the US. He was living in London for like a decade and a half, and he started calling himself European. Yeah, that's going to come back to bite him. So why would Poilievre then go down to the US to repeat the same mistakes? Stick to Canadian media, but do more of it. Anyways, I will be playing the Patrick Bet-Davis clip here. Warning, he does swear a little bit. I don't get these guys who are doing a pre-recorded podcast and they cannot control their language. It just makes you sound dumber to not be able to hold back. Anyways, but here's Patrick Bet-Davis's complaint.
Here's what's funny. Think about who, as a world leader, has a shittier resume than him and a worse approval rating. The fact that
He's talking about Justin Trudeau.
People are done with him. Mm-hmm. And even with that, Pierre Poilievre couldn't beat him.
That's what's the sad part.
Well, you know why it's not?
He couldn't beat him because he's apparently thinking that he ran as the leader in 2021. Because again, Patrick Bet-Davis doesn't know anything he's talking about.
Sad. Because every time we invited Pierre, arrogant, pompous team, the only podcast he ever did is Jordan Peterson. So let me get this straight. You saw Milei win because he went everywhere. You saw Bukele win, he went everywhere. You saw Trump win because he went everywhere. You saw Bobby win because he went everywhere. You saw Vivek become a superstar because he went everywhere. And you don't, you deserve losing. And you didn't win. And I said that to Canadians who love him. The candidate you adore and admire and love doesn't want to work.
Doesn't want to work, as in doesn't want to go on Patrick Bet-Davis's podcast to be asked questions by a guy who doesn't know thing one about Canadian politics. Here's a tip if you're ever getting into politics. Never take an interview as a politician with an interviewer who knows less than you in like a severe way. If this guy doesn't know thing one about what he's asking you questions about, that's dangerous because Poilievre, if he went on the PBD podcast, would have looked stupid by association with this guy making wrong assumptions about things that are going on, throwing him strange questions, and then Poilievre having to be, okay, that's not true. I'm going to explain how this works. Would it be maybe an interesting podcast? Sure. It's not Poilievre's job right now or his goal, mission in life to do interesting podcasts. It is his goal to get elected. And I have opinions on things he should be running on, things he should be doing. But the Patrick Bet Davis show is not in that list of things. I think they should be running on a more hawkish platform in terms of reducing immigration. I think 200,000, 250,000 a year of new permanent residents is still too high. It should be 100,000 to 150,000 max with a severe point system on it, and you cannot bring too many dependents with you. But again, this is not like he should do probably more media in Canada. Basically my goal is to preserve Pierre Poilievre to get him to win. Not that I'm ever going to lie for him, obviously. I will say what I think. But in terms of the advice I would give would be for him to win. Going on Joe Rogan's show even would not help Poilievre right now because everyone who watches Rogan probably already likes Poilievre. There's nothing wrong about doing podcasts or media shows that mostly your base consumes. That would be what going on Juno News and Rebel News and even Jordan Peterson pretty much represents. It does get a lot of other eyes on it, but again, why would you go onto an American show? He can keep citing, oh, Trump went on every show, RFK Jr. went on every show, Vivek went on every show. Were they going on UK podcasts though? Were they going on Nigerian podcasts or Canadian podcasts? No, they were not, because that would look very stupid. Americans, just as much as Canadians, are very aware of people's fake patriotism. If you were only doing American media, I'm pretty sure at some point people would call it the fact that you seem to not like Canadian media. And again, this thing is currently hurting Mark Carney right now. He doesn't really want to talk to Canadian media, especially independent media. But man, he banned me from an event. He banned Juno News from an event, True North. He banned the Western Standard. He's banned everybody. And he's suffering because of it. Everyone sees him as a metropolitan elitist. He doesn't care about the CBC. He ignores their shows, but then he goes and gets a back rub by Jon Stewart on The Daily Show. That hurts him. Moving his company to the US right now hurts him, especially because it's an unendorsement of the economy that he's helped Justin Trudeau build. It's so bad that even his company, Brookfield Asset Management, can't survive in the country. But again, I find Patrick Bet Davis's point here to be something I see a lot from like what I'd call podcast bros, that you should come on my very important show. Dude, Poilievre could be interviewed in someone's backyard and the video could be uploaded on a channel with no subscribers and it would still probably get 100,000 views because somebody would find it and spread it everywhere. Poilievre himself brings viewership. And that's what Patrick Bet Davis is really put out about. That Pierre Poilievre wouldn't come on his fun hit show to talk. Do you know how few Canadians watch the PBD podcast? Probably less than 5%. I know there might be some people here who watch his show, but one, the guy doesn't know anything about Canadian politics. That's already a red flag. And two, his show is actually not that big. I was scrolling through his YouTube feed for how many views this guy gets. It's not terrible, but it's not great either. I'm looking at videos that have been uploaded 3 or 4 days ago that have 150,000 views, 250,000 views, 300,000 sometimes. Those are good numbers. But the thing is, that's mostly concentrated in the US. I guarantee less than 5% of those people are Canadians. In any given video, and it's not because I'm the most popular guy on the planet, far from it, gets more Canadian views on just me talking. Because at least I'm actually talking about Canada, and people interested in Canadian stuff will come here. Or they'll go to the Pleb, or they'll go to Mr. Sunshine Baby, or they'll go to the Elevate podcast, or they'll go to Rebel, or they'll go to Juno. They're not going to the PBD podcast, but PBD, Patrick Bet Davis, is just basically narcissistic enough to think that he deserves an interview with Pierre Poilievre. By the way, this man literally has a painting in his house of him like hanging out with like great men of history, because for some reason this is like, I don't know, something that a guy who considers himself a big alpha male would do. I'm going to get the painting here. It's just embarrassing. Can I find it? I need to find this now. It's very funny. It's like this terrible looking oil painting that like is really flat looking. Like the entire thing doesn't look real. It looks like they didn't try too hard on this thing. And the guy does not exactly have an eye for art. Here, I think I got it. Thank you for sticking this out with me, guys. By the way, like the video, subscribe to the channel, do all that great stuff. Here's an actual painting in Patrick Bet-Davis's house, where he's hanging out with Albert Einstein, JFK, Abraham Lincoln, Tupac, I think the Shah of Iran, Milton Friedman, Michael, what is his, MLK Jr., and then some like racer. What? Some of these guys get such a big head just because they have a show. He's a millionaire. Obviously, he was able to start a big show. He was able to market the heck out of it. But anyways, I don't need to bring up his podcast numbers. I think you can take my word for it. I'm not undermining him. 300,000 is great viewership. 200,000 is great viewership. But if you actually converted that to Canadian and divided by 10, he's like a very middling podcast.
God forbid he has to cross the border and go talk to other borders to bring attention. God forbid, too much travel time. He's got to eat his apple. He's got to eat his apple because he's got to get his apple in his system. Go to New York, do a damn podcast outside of Jordan Peterson.
Why would New York help? He doesn't even know anything about him. All he knows is the Apple video about Poilievre.
Go do Joe Rogan's podcast. Go to some other podcast and talk to Lex. Go talk to whatever these other podcasts are. Go talk to Andrew Schultz down the street from you in New York. And you lost to Justin. You couldn't beat him.
Okay, I think I can basically make the case that the guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I did want to highlight some takes from other people who are reacting to this, including Jason Kenney, oddly enough. And I actually agree with Jason Kenney. I don't hate Jason Kenney in any way. I think he just failed during COVID because he didn't have the mettle to be leader during that time and make tough decisions. Here's Jason Kenney, though. He says, this bottom feeder gave sex trafficker, pimp, rapist Andrew Tate a platform, but is upset that Pierre Poilievre won't go on his show. Good on Pierre. Conservative political leaders need to have a zero contact policy with alt-right whack jobs like this. And PBD is legitimately someone I would consider on like the woke right. Like they are somebody who is not actually conservative when you break down their politics. But yes, Patrick Bet-David last week, and this is the exact same week he wanted to have Poilievre on that Poilievre's people said no. He had Andrew Tate on the show. Let's just say he is not a good guy. He is a criminal. He has admitted to it on tape. He had him on the podcast, and he only asked him nice questions. He gave Andrew Tate a back massage on camera, just like Benny Johnson did, just like all these other grifters who want the attention of having Andrew Tate on without ever actually confronting him and saying, hey, you said this, you did this, you're a pimp. What the heck? Like, no. And so I think Jason Kenney's right. But then somebody I actually like, but I just don't agree with them on this, and I just wanted to highlight their take. I can agree with aspects of it, is Rupa Subramanya. She said in response to Jason Kenney, directly said, the reality is that many conservative voters in Canada follow Patrick Bet-Davis, his hugely popular podcast, much as they do Joe Rogan. It reflects a new type of conservatism in Canada, something that is already the case in the United States and something many Canadian politicians or conservative politicians in Canada seem to be unaware of. And it's worrying when a conservative politician objects to a podcaster giving someone a platform, no matter how objectionable the guest may be. Well, the problem is when you don't ask the rapist tough questions. That's the problem. But she goes on and says, this is language of the woke. It weakens free speech and prevents open debate. With this type of squeamishness towards those they don't especially like, the conservatives in Canada will bleed part of their base when they're already being seen as indistinguishable from the liberals on many key issues. I don't agree that the conservatives are indistinguishable from the liberals on many key issues. I made a video, or at least I mentioned this in a video. I remember there was a Harrison Faulkner video from a couple months back where he was saying the liberals and conservatives are the exact same on immigration, on foreign policy, on trade. And it was like something else. It's like, I can maybe find similarities on immigration. Is Poilievre's cap still too high for me? Yes. It's also still 100,000 below what even the liberals already lowered it to. So that's a difference. I wish they would be more hawkish on it, but there is a difference there. On foreign policy, the conservatives and liberals are the same. Not a chance. My goodness. I think my friend Daniel Boardman confronted Harrison on that. He says, and I'm, again, openly willing to disagree with the conservatives when it's factual, my disagreement. And he said, what do they agree on foreign policy? He says Ukraine. No, they don't. They don't even agree. Yes, are they both against Russia taking over? Sure, but they have very different policies on how things should have been dealt with. the Trudeau Liberals don't even give useful aid to Ukraine. They give them like winter jackets and chocolate bars, and they pay the Chinese to send them drones, which is a little weird when the Chinese are literally on the Russian side and Canada is paying China to send Ukraine aid. That's how dysfunctional the Liberal Party is. And then on trade, like, no, they're not the same at all. They're not the same, especially just on economics in general. But yeah, this stuff kind of annoys me. And it's like, I don't like this idea that I agree. The conservatives at many times can be too careful, can be too squeamish about people saying things that are controversial. Oftentimes, it's not even controversial. 80% of people agree with the person. It's just that the media is going to portray it as controversial. But that doesn't change the fact that if somebody picks up the paper and reads the article saying, oh, you're against drag queen story hours. Oh, you're wanting to put 100,000 cap on immigration. Oh, you want to do whatever. That most people agree with them. It doesn't matter what the media spin is. People are going to be like, well, I kind of agree with that. Like, I don't know what the big deal is here. That actually happened in BC several times, that candidates for the BC Conservatives were told to shut up about issues that were 80-20 issues that we had 80% of people agreeing with us on. I had somebody, they got mad at a candidate for calling out having Pride Progress flags on all the fire trucks in Vancouver, saying that was ridiculous, it's a waste of taxpayer money, and it's basically showing that wokeism is like a new religion, that you have to have it on all the fire trucks. This person is socially moderate, if not a social liberal, and they were complaining about the fire trucks, and they were told, please don't talk about it. The CBC might attack us. I'm like, let them, tell them to, because my goodness, you would get so much good press, even if it's framed badly. So many people would read that and they're like, but he's right. There's needles all over the streets. There's drugs everywhere. There's crime rampant. Nobody can afford to live. And we wasted tens of thousands of dollars per fire truck to outfit them with Pride Progress flags, designs. What the heck? So that's, but I come back though, and I think that then people like Rupa are doing a big overread of what's going on here. I want to highlight one more thing on this controversy. Hopefully you don't think I'm being very tedious in how much I'm covering this. But one other thing I wanted to talk about was actually not talk about. I want to highlight this guy's very good take on this issue. It's from his, I believe, his TikTok or his channel or whatever, his Instagram. His name is Mario Zelaya, and I want to link his video in here. I'm just going to skip ahead to the point where he actually starts talking about Patrick Bet-Davis. But I thought he actually had a great take on all of this, and I think it needs to be highlighted. Again, I'm going to link his video on X in the description below. Because again, and at the top of the comments, I thought he just immediately nailed it.
So that clown right there is Patrick David Betts. I used to have a lot of respect for him until he made that video, basically crying about the fact that Pierre Poilievre doesn't want to go on his little podcast. Here's the thing about Patrick David Betts. Outside of his own American circle, very few people actually know who he is. Strategically, it makes absolutely no sense to go to an American country and support an American podcaster. And frankly, he's a very successful businessman. But why would he ever go on your podcast when the liberals are being torn apart for going and doing the same on talk shows in the US? We're not here to pander to Americans. Americans don't get to vote in our election. So why would we go on an American podcast? Why would you expect Pierre Poilievre to do that? And the funny thing is, for someone so intelligent, you can tell he's so desperate and so butthurt that he's trying to put correlation as though it's causation. That because Milei, the president of Argentina, went on all these podcasts, he automatically, that's the only reason he became president. No, he was going to become president anyways, just like Pierre Poilievre is going to become prime minister anyhow.
I'm going to pause it there. You guys can watch the rest of it on X. I encourage you guys to go give him a follow. I thought that was a very well-made video. And by the way, did Trump win the presidency because he went on a lot of podcasts? I think some of the podcasts helped. Some of the podcasts probably didn't mean anything. In fact, sometimes going on a podcast can hurt you. Remember Kamala Harris doing the Call Her Daddy podcast? That objectively hurt her for multiple reasons. It was a panderingly soft podcast in which she gave really stupid answers to softball questions. It came out that she spent $100,000 setting up that podcast. Yeah, it made her look really bad. And it was doubling down on voters Kamala Harris already had. Sometimes doing podcasts with people who are in your base is not even a smart move in terms of like a very conservative person who's only going to vote for you. Don't go on their podcast and then get into a conversation that's going to be very winding and rabbit holey. And if you say something controversial, I have no problem with someone saying something controversial. Nothing wrong with it. But we're so close to an election, we might get to the point where you saying something, you don't have enough time to maybe contextualize and show that people are lying about what you said. So yeah, it's foolish. Don't do that. Follow that guy's X account. I think he had a really good take, but I think that there are certain populists in Canada who read Poilievre not going on to podcasts they like as being like a betrayal. It's not. Should Poilievre do more podcasts? Absolutely. I think they should get more conservative on policy. People do not want like something a little bit better than the Liberals. And I think they are much better than the Liberals right now. But people want it to be 10,000% better than the Liberals. So right now, what you need to do as the Conservatives is become more aggressive on the issues. Because being more aggressive means that you are more strongly indicting the Liberals. If you're saying that I have to cut this and that spending because it's worthless, I have to cut this taxes, I'm going to be removing this program, we're going to be capping immigration at this, we're going to be deploying this many more police resources to the provinces to crack down on crime. By going more on the offensive, what you are doing is also indicting them that because I have to make these big policy moves, it's because you guys messed up so much. Anyways. So that should be it for me today. I was going to say today, guys. I'm going to try and get over that habit. This is it for this video, and I might be back later with another one today. Again, make sure to like the channel, subscribe, leave a comment. What do you think about this controversy? And other than that, I'll see you guys later.